No limits, no boundaries. I see increase all around me. Say no limits.
Senior Pastor Pastor James C.Wells is the Senior Pastor of Power of the Resurrection Church. As founding pastor and spiritual leader, Pastor Wells provides guidance and direction to congregants and is a significant advisor to many in the community. Pastor Wells and his wife, Reverend Dr. Patricia Wells, founded Power of the Resurrection Church in 1991.
This morning, I want to talk to you about presenting your body as a living sacrifice. And it all has to do with lordship, the lordship of Jesus Christ. Someone said that he's either Lord of all or he's not Lord at all. In other words, he's got to be Lord of your life, and you have to make him Lord of your life. See, he's Lord. That's not a question. He's Lord, but is he Lord of your life? Amen? And so, I want to just deal with presenting your bodies as a living sacrifice. In the Old Testament, if you would study it, look at it, read it, God instrumented the sacrificial system, or the system of sacrificing. And no religious act was complete unless it was accompanied by a sacrifice. The sacrificial system was designed by God with the intention, now listen very carefully, with the intention of awakening a consciousness of sin and uncleanness, and of showing the possibility of obtaining forgiveness of sin and becoming righteous and reconciled to God. That's what God was doing. And that sacrificial system was a type and a shadow that pointed to Christ, who would come. And when he would come, all those animals that were sacrificed, they had to be without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. They couldn't be sick or lame, because they signified or typified him, the unblemished Lamb, the perfect Lamb of God, who would sacrifice himself once for the sins of men. Every year they had to go in, the Levitical priests had to go back every year and make an atonement for sin. And every year, thousands of animals would be slaughtered over near the altar in order to appease God, because they could not please God. Because the blood of an animal could not reconcile man to God. But it was a type, a shadow of what God was going to do through Christ. When he promised Eve in the Garden of Adam that one would bruise the heel and other would bruise his head. God was terrified of what God was going to do. And so they had to come every year and make an atonement for their sins. The high priest would make an atonement for the people, but before he could offer sacrifice for the people, he had to make a sacrifice for himself, so that he would be pleasing to God, and God would be appeased for another year. The presenting of God a gift for a portion of the results. In other words, let me say it this way. What they had to do, listen now. They would present a portion of the results of their labor. In other words, they would bring to God a portion of their labor, of what they had labored over. And what this implied, the bringing of it implied a surrender of the person to God. Now just follow me for a minute. But man is unholy and sinful, and thus unable to surrender himself to God. I don't care what you do, you can't surrender yourself to God in and of yourself. Amen. It's impossible. therefore, what they would do, they would bring that animal before the gate of the tabernacle. Now watch this now. And they would lay their hands, the offerer will lay their hands upon the head of the sacrifice, of the animal that was to be sacrificed. And that was a symbol of transferring to the victim the sins of the one who was offering the sacrifice. So in other words, when they laid their hands upon the sacrifice, it was symbolic or implied that their sins were being transferred from them to the sacrifice. And thus when the sacrifice was slaughtered, he became a substitute for them. Are you all follow me? The sinfulness of the offering in the sacrifice. So it had to be one without spot, without wrinkle, without blemish, couldn't be diseased, couldn't have one eye, couldn't be club-footed. It had to be perfect when you looked at it. Now watch this now. And the high priest had the responsibility of inspecting the sacrifice to make sure it was right. Thus the animal took the place of the one offering the sacrifice and became the substitute. And that pointed to Jesus because he became our substitute. The killing of the animal pointed to the necessity of the death of the man whose sin alienated him from God. Sacrifice was the ritual through which the Hebrew people offered the blood of an animal to God as a substitute payment for their sin. Are you all following me this morning? So the question becomes, or the question is this: what is a living sacrifice? What is a living sacrifice? Romans 12:1 says, Paul says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your body as a living sacrifice.
Power of the Resurrection Church welcomes you. Our mission is to share the love and life, transforming gospel of Jesus Christ with all people.